In the unlikeliest of situations, Jake has found out that Amaka likes him. Even more, she craves him. He saw it in her eyes and reaction when they kissed. This realization, in the moment they had 5 minutes ago, has the potential to alter things greatly between him and Thelma. And feeling a bit uneasy about his current affection for Thelma, he made up his mind he's going to go all in with Amaka. Enthusiastically, Jake got up from his bed and made for the kitchen. For such foods that will take long to prepare, he likes to start early. He managed to push the thought of Thelma and his dramas aside, knowing quite well that it won't take long before they come rushing back into his head. Since Thelma started treating him with less regard and flaunting her attention to Godwin in his face, he has come to dislike her. Even though it took him a while to realize it, that by trying to win her back, he was making things worse. However, regardless of his hurting feelings for Thelma, a part of him feels he's being too extreme in how he's treating her lately. Even more, he really does not like what it seems to be turning him into, a snob. Couple of days after he forced himself to stop treating Thelma with care and attention and to limit all communication with her, Thelma has started sensing that something was off with him. Jake had hoped that with all the quarrels and upsets that he shows her, that somehow Thelma would change her attitude before he does. Yet, that evening in the school hostel, as shady as it was, he knew that he has gotten to the height of it. Jake sat under the mango tree going through his chat with Thelma on WhatsApp. Majorly a fight they had. It had been tons of messages after messages from him to her and then from her to him. Jake trying to put her right on her lateness attitude. She relentlessly was telling Jake that he cannot just come and start acting all fatherly to her. Jake could not forget the line where she told him, "You are just my friend, and so act like a friend that you are." And that was it. In that moment, reading that line on his WhatsApp, he had to ask himself that question. Who is this girl? Who is Thelma, by the way? Perspective, they say, defines one's actions. Jake understands that firsthand. He knew that all it would take him was to change his perspective of Thelma. And with that question, he set his mind off everything that concerns her. He had subjected virtually everything that Thelma told him ever since they met to critical view, and indeed, there were a lot of cracks in her stories and behaviors. Cracks that his initial feelings for her had obscured. He wondered how he was so blind to the obvious staring him on the face the night she came back crying from one of her outings with a guy she met some 4 days earlier. The time was, well, it's always somewhere between 9:30 p.m. and 10:30 p.m. She came straight into Jake's room wearing that face that says, "I've messed up things again." Jake understood right away something was terribly wrong. "Jake," she called, "do you think I'm alright? Lately, I don't know what I'm doing anymore." Startled by the question, Jake stood up from his reading desk to discover that she was already welling up in tears. That night, she told Jake that the guy she went to visit took her to one of the big eateries, took her to his house, and earlier this night almost raped her. Jake simply glanced at the clock as it ticked past 10:22 p.m. A familiar realization and unspoken words clutching his throat. Crying profusely now, she told Jake that she is losing control of everything. She admitted that she made out with Chooks and Godwin too, and that she lied to him about her virginity. She went on to tell him about how she ruined her 2-year relationship back at home because of some guy she met and couldn't control herself around him. Yet, the guy wouldn't date her unless she'd be sleeping with him. Jake held her in his arms, seeing how helpless she is, and pacified her as much as he can. As he did, he wondered if he too was just another guy added to her list of body counts. Perhaps he would have seen her for who she really is that night. But Jake was too stupidly in love to read the signs. He too had fallen into her snares many nights ago. That night, it was all rosy and sweet. He remembered it vividly. The sexual tension between them on her bed almost wild. She rolled away and back again on the bed, laughing to his jokes, aligning her back with his chest. "Are you not feeling hot inside that t-shirt?" she asked him, her intentions obvious. Jake was lying next to her, her body pressing softly against his chest and muscular tummy, all hidden inside his red body hug t-shirt. Edging his body up, he removed his top and returned to his lying position. The sight of his bare body was just tempting, just as she has always imagined. "Feeling better now?" she added, already resting next to him on the bed and facing him. "You know the weather is hot and you are wearing that thing." Her voice a whisper, her face an inch away from his, and she savored the breath of the Hollandia yogurt the two of them took some 20 minutes ago. Jake, understanding where she was leading him to, simply nodded and, with his right arm, pulled her closer to his bare chest. She could feel it down there, pressing against the inside of her bare thighs. Then, her body aroused and she whispered, "Did you have to do that?" Her slender left arms already on his back and stroking up and down his spine as he just smiled and pressed her even tighter. "I like your chest and your smooth skin," she continued. Jake brushed his palms up her left arm and slid down the spaghetti hand of her nightgown. Free and uncovered, her chest was bare and her breasts were hard and staring up at him. Her heart was pounding, not from fear, but pleasure. "You really want that?" she asked, not really expecting any answers, as she felt his lips rubbing against hers in a soft kiss. There was nothing to stop them now. The night was theirs, and they are the grown-ups. The bed, his bare chest, his strong arms, the hardness tugging inside her thighs, the hormones, and the 11:15 p.m., accepting how immense the pleasure would be. She breathed hard and wrapped his lips with hers. As Jake thought about the pleasures of romance they had that night, he accepted that he was just another body count and ruled that night for having been so passionate. He had always thought that after that romantic night, that she would get more attached to him, but it was as if she got what she wanted and moved on to the next hunt. Jake managed to drag his memory to the present and the task at hand. He removed one pot from its hanger. The custard container that he stores his beans is kept on top of the cupboard. He opened it and poured enough quantity into the pot. Adding enough water to cover the beans, he set the pot on fire to parboil. Setting out the ingredients he'd need to prepare the dish, he thought of how hard he has been on Thelma lately. Ever since Jake stopped giving Thelma his attention and care, she, ironically, started being overtly friendly towards him and caring about how he is doing. It was as if she was trying to get his attention back. Coupled with Amaka that has moved in with them, there seemed to be this thought on her side that she could lose him to the new girl. Jake once caught himself almost wondering if things are still fine with her and Godwin, but decided against it. It doesn't matter to him anymore. Earlier, when she was all over Godwin, she stopped being aware of Jake and his attention to her. However, these days, she'd come in to say hi to Jake when she returns from school and then sit down to gist him about how her day went. Jake would listen absently, putting more attention to his phone. He'd also never share how his own day went and would reply with a bland and hollow, "It was fine," anytime Thelma asked after his day. She'd come back from market and expect Jake to come over and check out what she bought. Jake would totally ignore her. She'd make soup and call on Jake to come and taste it. Jake will either excusably decline or post her and will never come. She will invite Jake to come share a can of juice or suya that she bought. Again, Jake will either decline or post her. She'd come in with a sad face and complain to Jake how she's not feeling very okay. Jake would show less concern and act in a way that would give her that "I don't have time for that now" feeling. For an entire week, Jake has not stepped foot into her room. She can't even remember the last time Jake sat down on her bed. If she and Jake happen to find themselves in a casual discussion and she wants to act all girly and babyish, Jake simply ignores her totally. Unlike before, Jake doesn't bother asking her whereabouts these days or inform her his own whereabouts. No calls, no chats, nothing anymore. He had completely cut off everything they shared together. One of the evenings, she had come over to Jake's room to talk to him about his new attitude. Before she could settle down on his bed, Jake told her that he doesn't have any concerns to talk about with her, and then excused her with the reason that he needs to sleep because of a stressful day. Jake literally threw it to her face that he doesn't care anymore. Amaka said that you're preparing beans and plantain for dinner. Thelma called from behind him. Her voice was soft with a blot of sadness. She had walked into Jake's room without his notice, standing on the entrance of the kitchen. I brought you the plantains. She almost dropped the plantain she was carrying on the kitchen floor. Jake, distracted from his thoughts, spun around and caught her face just in time. Okay, just give them to me. I'll cut them right away. He dropped the 6 plantains on the sink area. Thank you. No problem. She brightened up, almost excited at Jake's acceptance. We'll wait for you now, Amaka and I, in my room. Then she left. When Jake looked at her, he saw the face of a girl that is hurting. He saw in her someone that seems to have accepted her fate, having tried all she could to restore things. For the past 3 months, he has been her best friend, an emotional support, and someone that cared deeply about her. But not anymore. For every time she tells him of an adventure with another guy, Jake felt betrayed, mostly because of the level of intimacy that had existed between them. Jake knows that he isn't the type of guy that can turn around and go back to caring about Thelma as he did months ago, no matter how deep his feelings for her ran. He'd rather continue to ignore it until it goes away. Amidst everything, Jake knew one thing for sure. Thelma has a good heart. Perhaps she's just another girl that is losing control of things and is still struggling to discover herself. Perhaps what she needs is more help and not a malice that his initial affections for her are gradually morphing into. She's right about the whole lunch thing not going to be enough for the 3 of them. But as his initial feelings blurred his sense of reasoning, he feels his malice is doing worse now to his personality. Thelma lost my affection and attention. He thought to himself, but I cannot lose myself too. I misjudged this afternoon. In how many other situations have I misjudged as well? The question sank in Jake's mind. Jake realized that his internal conflict isn't really about Thelma and her current kind of life, but because of his perception of things and how he's handling it. If anything, boy, he whispered to himself, learn from this and sharpen your knowledge and skills for whoever that comes next. Speaking of whoever comes next, Amaka walked into the kitchen almost at that moment. How is it going, chef? She smiled at him with eyes reminding him of a while ago. Jake, this time, took a moment to scan her slender body, her straight legs stretching down from her bum shorts. The lightness of her skin almost felt like it could puncture under pressure. Without saying a word, Jake walked over to where she stood by the kitchen door and grabbed her by the waist. Resting her on the inside wall of the kitchen, he stroked her arms gently while kissing her lips deeply. For a full 2 minutes, they were kissing each other and fondling each other's body. Wait. Amaka pulled away for a second. Are you sure about this? Jake looked at her for a moment and nodded his head. Yes, I'm sure. Okay. What about Thelma? She whispered. taking Jake completely by surprise. Wait, what about her? Jake almost stammered, stunned by Amaka's obvious question about his affections for Thelma. I know you and Thelma have something. I have seen how you both act around each other, especially you. It's easy to tell that you love her, so that's why I'm asking you. She concluded and folded her arms across her chest. Jake, seeing how serious her concern is about Thelma, thought about telling her immediately about the issue they are having. But then, he decided against it, at least for now. Listen, Amaka, his voice calm and collected. I know we are just acting in the heat of the moment, and I can tell you I'm enjoying it. And if you'd like to talk about it, which may not be now, I'm more than willing to talk about it with you. Perhaps we understand more about it. But what I can assure you now is that there is no Thelma to worry about, he concluded. Amaka, relaxing her arms, moved over to him. She seemed to have liked how he responded to the question. Okay, Chef. Now finish up the food. I'll be seeing you later. She planted another kiss on his lips and made for the room door. Still amazed by the thrilling moment he's having with Amaka, he couldn't help imagining what officially dating her would feel like. He then wondered how she got to know about his affections for Thelma, but then shoved the thought away. With Amaka in the picture now, whatever feelings he had for Thelma would surely disappear. He opened the pot to see tiny bubbles speedily trickling up from the bottom and imagined that is how fast his feelings for Thelma will evaporate from his mind. Pulling up the kitchen knife to start work on the plantains, he decided he'd make a conscious effort to understand what happened between him and Thelma. That instead of spiting or keeping malice with her, that he would learn how and why Thelma's affection and attention for him faded. He wondered again why she was overtly trying hard to get his attention since he stopped giving a damn about her lately. That thought also spurred him to want to learn more about his experience with her. Could things have been different if I acted perhaps differently in our friendship? What other ways could I have managed things between us and would have maintained the affections? He wondered. There are surely ways a guy can keep a woman's fire burning for him continually. Jake thought about conversations where guys discuss how one girl or the other continually chase after them, how they will have girls fighting over them. He assured himself that he will learn it, he will master it, even though he genuinely does not intend to go about playing girls around. But he now understands that some of those skills are important for a guy to keep his woman. For now, there is a pot of beans and plantain to cook. There is a girl he intends to keep impressing with his cooking skills. As Jake moved his entire attention to the boiling pot of beans and the peeled plantain on the sink, he decided he would begin to treat Thelma better and solely as a friend. He will never go back to the past. He knows that. But is now determined to make the future with Amaka brighter. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and we're bringing you more of this beautiful thing. Cheers.